Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So, Hallowed, my band's album, has been out for a week now, or just over a week, and I thought today that I'd go through a session file, or a Logic session file, for one of the songs. We're going to look at a song called The Servant King, which is the first song on the album, and coincidentally also the first song that I wrote for Meet Your Maker back when I joined sort of midway through 2022. So, this song has been around a while. It's not actually the song that's been around the longest, but it has been around for a while. And it's kind of special to me because it was the first song I wrote properly for Meet Your Maker. And it's just a lot of fun to play, listen to. It's just kind of a short and sweet banger. So we're going to take a look at what we did. So this is the session in front of me. I didn't end up mixing the album, but I did produce it. So this mix that you're going to hear in this session isn't quite exactly the same as the mix on the album, but this is what my process is like to get a song ready to be sent to a mix engineer. So the first thing I'm going to go through is my mastering chain. This is lifted straight from Nolly. Same settings mostly, same plugins mostly. It's nothing special, but it just does the job really well, and that's why I've gone for it. So I've got this EQ firstly. We're just sort of cutting out some highs, right down the center. Sorry, cutting out some lows. Gosh, we're doing a high pass, cutting out some lows right down the center in mono. And then the rest is just some light shaping, some sort of mids and lows shaping, and then also just adding in a bit of air here. I can't remember why I've got this notch here, but clearly it was doing something. That then goes into this tape machine, just gives it a nice bit of sort of extra saturation on the whole mix and some nice warmth as well, analog warmthness. Just gives you that analog vibe, and then that's going into my sort of limiter mastering kind of thing, and that just takes care of all the loudness, basically makes it loud, and stops it from clipping on the master bus, which is not what we want. From there, I've got all of the instruments feeding into its own instrument bus, and it's hitting two compressors. So the first one is this FG Grey compressor, and if I play sort of a small section of it, if I play it from here, you'll see what it's doing. So it's got a fast attack and fast release, and it's just clamping down on the transients of the kick and the snare. Really, that's all it's doing. And what that does is it helps the sustain of the snare sit with the mix rather than poke out a lot, because I do like a very drum forward mix, and it's cool to have a drum forward mix, but then what this does is just help it glue together. And it's really cool because it's also got this high pass function, which means I can set this so that it won't compress any frequencies under what I've set it to. So it's not compressing any frequencies at the moment under 60 hertz, which is cool. It's a really handy function. And then that's going into this FG Red, which is basically just doing parallel compression. So you'll notice the mix here is only set to about 20%. But it's absolutely slamming the compressor. So if I play it here, you'll see. So it's just adding a slight pump to the mix, just gives it a bit of energy, Then on the vocal, so all vocal master bus is just some compression, just 1176, and then some sort of saturation and stuff. And then an EQ as well, which looks like this, pretty basic. But yeah. So the drums are all programmed on this album, as well as the bass. The only real instruments on this album are the guitars and the vocals. And I programmed everything myself. And once I'd programmed everything, I sort of met with Pete, the drummer in Meet Your Maker, and sort of got his approval for all the parts, so that it felt like that the drums were played in his style, or if I did something if I did something a little bit too crazy, he'd be like, that's not really doable, so let's just change it. So that's what we did. So for drums, I am using Gecko drums. I didn't use Modern and Massive 2 on this album because it didn't come out yet, so I'm using Gecko drums P5, but then also layering in the kick and the snare, I believe, from One Hit Wonder Architects. Okay, and then we've got the whole kit from P5, so cymbals. So you'll notice on these two crashes, I opted for the wetter, sort of more washier sounding cymbals. Initially, when it loads up, it has these crashes, which are drier. But I just didn't really like them that much, so I opted for the washier cymbals. And then the snare is the mid snare, I believe, with the sort of brass hoop. We've got lots of reverb going on there, and then the kick is the reference kick, the 22x18 Pearl reference, rather than the Pearl Masters. The Pearl Masters is a bit too clicky, and this just had a nicer low end in my opinion. Sounds a bit more beefy. And then toms, I think, are just the smaller sizes, I think. So, yep. So the only toms that you can choose, really. But yeah, that's the kit, and then that's all getting routed out 3 separate channels, and all then going through a bunch of buses split up per sort of drum category, and then that's going through a master drum bus. So I am doing some sort of processing on the different buses for each kit piece. And then that's all going through a master drum bus, basically, which then goes to the instrument bus. So I'm not going to go through loads of the processing just for time, but so on this, we've got Virtual Mix Rack, which is a plugin I use a lot. I'm pretty sure a lot of these settings are also taken from Nolly. So if I just solo the drums and give it a play for a second, you'll hear it. So you'll see this compressor is doing a lot here, but you'll also notice it's only at sort of 30%. So basically sort of doing some parallel compression. But yeah, so it's kind of set with the sort of quite a slow attack, but then quite a fast release, letting those transients through, making them nice and beefy. And then we've just got some EQ, so we're kind of boosting some 5K, boosting some about 100 hertz here. And then this EQ, all it's really doing is boosting some 12K for some sort of cymbal airiness. It's like a really nice filter on this EQ, which is why I chose to use it. And then that's going through black box, some distortion, some saturation. So also doing a little bit of gain staging as well, which is probably not the correct way to do it, but yeah, whatever, you know. And then it's going through some EQ, which it's not a lot happening. A lot of the EQ and the heavy lifting is done on the individual sort of like buses of all the different drums and things. So just taking out some extra low end that I don't need, probably 40 hertz, and then just a little dip here to take out some higher frequencies and things. So that just tightens up that low end and the kick there, which is nice. So yeah, moving on from that, we've just got, this is what I have in sort of every session, the FX bus, which is all the sub drops, rises, explosions, whatever. I don't really do any processing on this. All I do is level on it because a lot of the samples and stuff I use are already pre-processed. So it'll just be stuff like this. Which sounds great. I used this particular sample a lot on this album, on this particular song. I didn't really use it too much anywhere else on the album. I just, at the time of writing it, I liked it, so I used it. Then bass, as I said, was programmed, but I've just bounced out the MIDI, bounced it in place, and then duplicated it So I've got a bass dirty channel and a bass sub channel. So, and you can see from this bus, there's a lot going on here. So bass by itself sounds like this. So very distorted, very, sort of compressed as well. Just a nice, consistent low end to it as well, which is what we're looking for. So the bass dirty channel by itself sounds like this. And then bass sub. So with the bass dirty channel, just going through some EQ before the amp, some sort of more distortion and stuff. Then a compressor, sort of compressing it probably about 4 dB. Oh, compressing about 8 dB. And then it's going to go into the Dark Glass B7K Ultra pedal from Neural DSP. And this is the sort of Meteor Maker preset I made. So with that on and off, sounds like this. So it's doing a lot. It's got a lot of sort of nice grunty sort of distortion to it. And it's going through another EQ, which is taking out some sort of low mids. I hate sort of like 250 to 300 hertz on a bass. That sounds not my vibe at all. So cutting out some of that and then cutting out some sort of 3K. And this was quite intentional because this is the 3K area is somewhere that I boosted a fair bit with the guitars because that's kind of where the pick attack is. So I took out that 3K there to make room for the guitar's pick attack. And then cutting off everything below 83 hertz there, which is actually quite low. I normally do it a bit higher for that for the bass dirty channel, but it is what it is. And then sub just is pretty simple actually. It's just EQ, cutting off everything above 250 hertz, and then a compressor, and then this plugin called Infinite Bass or Infinity Bass. Yeah, that's it. So this is like a sort of bass synthesizer almost. It kind of just basically just boosts sub frequencies. It's kind of like that plugin Basement if you're familiar with that one. So I'll show you what that does with and without. So if you're not listening through like nice speakers or headphones, you wouldn't really hear what that's doing, but it's like really significantly affecting the sub frequencies. You can see I've got it set to about 62 hertz there. So everything below that is getting boosted pretty much. So yeah, and then it's going through a whole bunch of stuff here. Compression, more compression, some EQ, some limiting EQ stuff. This is quite cool. This is actually a sidechain plugin. So what it's actually designed to do is you put it on, it has that instant like sort of dance sidechain effect. But what you can do is you can sidechain it to something. So I've got it sidechained on the kick, and then the next instance is a snare. And then everything, what it's doing is ducking everything below. Actually, no, it's just ducking the whole signal, but only like 17% of it. So you'll see it's reading the kick waveform and then ducking it a little bit by 17% to make, just sort of help it punch through a bit more. And I'm doing that with both the kick and snare. So that's the bass. Guitars is this. So I went through a lot of iterations of guitars. I tracked this song a lot, quite a few times, just as I got better at tracking and better at producing. You know, the song's almost sort of 3 years old, so obviously you improve over time. And so yeah, it went through quite a lot of guitar tones, but arrived at something I'm quite happy with, and is still sort of the sort of main tone I go for these days. So all it is just an EQ before the amp, and that is just cutting out some sort of low mids and then boosting some high mids before the amp. So if I solo the guitars, if I solo this, put it in the middle, turn off the amp. So this area of the DI, And then we don't need that going through the amp at all. We don't need that. So yeah, and then that's going into the amp, which is Archetype Gojira X. So on the third amp, these are the settings, and then also on the third cab, we've got a Tube Screamer going into it, and that's pretty much it. Really, there's nothing too fancy going on. I've got some EQ off the amp as well. So that sounds like this. If I take off all the bus processing, actually, you'll hear what it sounds like. If we go to the breakdown. So there's a fair bit happening with the bus processing. So yeah, we've also got this guitar C or guitar center channel, and that's just the sort of this main riff. This main riff here. Just on a different tone and panned straight down the center, and this also blends with the synthesizer at the same time. So it's like really fuzzy, and like I used the fuzz pedal in Archetype Gojira, and sort of lo-fied as well a little bit, which is quite cool. I was quite inspired by North Lane, their song, not Clockwork, Clarity, I think. They have like a groove section, and they have like the riff from earlier blended with the synthesizer and a guitar straight down the middle, and I just thought it was really cool, so I just wanted to rip that off as well, really. So that's what I did. A little insider there, insight rather. And then the rest is just these are tones with no gate on, so that it can ring out longer. And then we've got some lo-fi tones here, which are bounced and panned, which is why they're not actually panned here. So that's right before the breakdown, and that's the rhythm guitars. Pretty simple. Processing wise, this is some secret sauce here. I took these compressor settings from Lance Prince, who is the guy behind sort of mixing Alpha Wolf, and they're a huge influence for us as a band musically, and I love their guitar sound. And this sort of compressor settings really helps get that sound. It's like the really aggressive like attack of the guitars every time they stop and come in again. It's like you really hear that silence, but then you also just get punched by the sort of attack and transience of the guitar. And he shows these settings on a video on his YouTube channel, so I like paused it and I was like, I'm taking these settings, and it works amazingly. So if I take this compressor off, if I take everything off and then turn the compressor on and off again, you'll hear what it does. And it's a really good section to hear in the breakdown. We'll do it. Okay. So it's adding extra saturation with this distortion knob here, and then also just like really punching you with those transients. It sounds great. Then next it's going into this SSL channel strip. This is also a little bit of secret sauce. So what I like to do is boost a little bit. I normally boost it a bit more than that, but boost to some sort of 3K. Again, that's the pick attack of the guitar. Also just like to cut out some sort of high mids here. And then what else we're doing? Let's see. Cutting out some low mids. Yeah, about 300 hertz there. So yeah, cutting out some of that. And then this looks like we're boosting about 100 hertz. So some nice low end. But what I do love about this plugin is this width knob. So adding a little bit of widening, which makes it sound nicer, and then also some extra saturation with this sort of preamp thing here. And then the compressor over here isn't doing anything. So that on and off sounds like this. So the guitar tone really comes to life going through that plugin. It's always on for me, even when I'm writing. My tones are always going through it, pretty much identical setting. It's really musical and adds a lot to the guitar tone. So yeah, it's really cool. It's a great plugin. And then we've got some EQ going on. So this looks like a sort of dynamic band clamping down on those palm mutes. So actually, this is a good section to show that. So it's only really taking out the low end when it's palm muting. So when you palm mute, going through like a high gain tone, you add an extra low end, and that's sort of taming that a little bit. Got it high passed about 70 hertz. I don't like to high pass too much on a guitar, especially when it's quite a low tuning. This is a drop F sharp, it's quite low already. So it's taking out a fair bit, you know, it's taking out all where the kick and the bass needs to be, but it's not like really killing the tone. Then just cutting out some more 300 hertz. 300 hertz is my least favorite thing on a high gain guitar tone. It sounds terrible, so getting rid of that, and then taking out some sort of harshness, and then taking out the real top end that I don't need. This is actually quite a low pass for me. I don't normally low pass that this low, but I just feel like I needed it. And then going through virtual mix rack, so we've got some more compression by the looks of things, and then some more more saturation here, and then this is just kind of adding some presence and adding some sort of low end as well. So if I play this with and without, so yeah, kind of doing similar to what these two plugins over here are doing, just more of it in a sort of different way. Sounds really nice to me. And then doing the same sort of sidechain tricks with kickstart as I am on the bass, and that's rhythm guitars really. Yeah, there's a lot that's gone into sort of me figuring out what works, and this chain is pretty much consistent with most of the album sessions. And it took just a lot of trial and error, really. A lot of trying different things, a lot of different philosophies, and I've settled on something that I feel like works for me, and that's what's important, isn't it? It's finding out what works for you. So then we got into the guitar leads. There's not a lot going on in this song. There's just some stuff in the chorus. So we've got this guy. And that's mirroring the sort of chorus guitars there. So just the same chords, just an octave up with some delay and reverb, and then we've got this sort of guitar pad thing. Take that off. And then this is the same thing at the end here when the tempo drops. Yeah, so this would have been with Archetype Gear Zero as well. Just going through a bunch of reverb, basically just kind of like a lead sound with the reverb and the shimmer turned way up, and it kind of makes this big sort of pad sound. It's quite nice. And then, yeah, synths. So obviously the sort of song starts with this fade in on the synth. So this is actually just a riff. This is just the riff programmed into the synthesizer. So it sounds like this. So this is a Serum patch that I made. It's got a saw wave, and then this, like, whatever this sort of like weird waveform is here. And then, yeah, setting envelope 2 to the cutoff here so that it makes that plucky sound. So if I put it back to the start. You'll see the filter here. And then you'll see I'm also automating that cutoff to open up, which is what makes it the sort of fade in sound. And one thing I wanted is to hear that resonance of the filter, which is the that sort of resonance there in the filter. And then what's happening? Some distortion, some compression, got the OTT setting on. So, whoa, my apologies. So it's doing a lot there with the sound of that. And then this is actually something I quite like to do a lot, actually, is send my synthesizers through Archetype Gojira, because the reverb and the delay and stuff sounds really good on synths. So I just turn everything off, put it in stereo, and then, you know, use the reverb and delay. Sometimes I mess around with these pedals here as well, and maybe some whammy and stuff, but it's normally for the reverb and delay. So it's got a little bit of reverb happening. A little bit, not much. And then just some EQ. So this is probably going to cut out some lows. Yeah, so it's kind of like almost a sort of wide lo-fi EQ. And then that is also what blends with that lo-fi guitar tone. And then in the chorus, does like a little arpeggiator thing. So I got a lot of mileage out of that one, actually, which is cool. Yeah, and then got this pad. I use this pad sound on, actually, yeah, every song on the album. It's just so versatile. And this one's pretty out of the box, but I've normally just like put a bunch of effects and like different plugins and stuff on it and mess around with it. But it's just a great pad, just great all-rounder. So this is what this is doing. So all of that with the lead guitars. And then all of that, I'll just mute these vocals, all that together. Yeah, works for me. Sounds good to me. So yeah, that's synths. And then we've got vocals. So this is consistent with the whole album. All of the main scream that you hear, like the main vocal, is 3 tracks of Matt. So he triple tracked all of his main vocals, which was a lot of work, but it was worth it because it paid off. And what it is one sort of center down the middle, and then 2 quieter ones panned a little bit left and right. So you'll hear the difference actually if I solo it. Oh, I just forgot that I muted the vocals earlier. There we go. Okay, if we solo it. Will be last and the last will be first. The one who's most worthy lowers to the door. Okay, and then this is just it by itself. Last and the last will be first. The one who's most worthy lowers to the door. They call for a red bullet spit at your face, but this limits a liar. So it just adds a bit of width and adds some sort of extra sort of depth to the vocals, which is cool. Yeah, and that's going through quite a lot of stuff, some de-essing, some compression. This is a cool plugin, Fresh Air. This does a lot to a vocal, actually. My friend, gosh, I apologize for that. My friend Alex Hart turned me onto this plugin. It's actually free, I'm pretty sure. It just adds some nice air to a vocal, hence the name Fresh Air. So if I solo this, you'll see what it does. Just add some extra definition to the high end of the vocal, which helps it cut through a bit more, which is nice. And then, yeah, some saturation. This is actually another cool trick that my friend Alex showed me. This is a reverb plugin set to like a really short decay, and then the mix, so only about 25%, and it just widens the vocals even more. So if I turn this off, this is quite a big difference actually. This So adds a lot of width to that vocal. So yeah, that's a really cool trick that Alex showed me, which is cool. Steal that if you want. That's, yeah, great trick. And then the cleans here. So this song is inconsistent with the rest of the album in the fact that we didn't triple track his clean vocals. But the idea with this chorus is that, you know, as you hear on the album, they're sort of more in the background. They're not like a clean chorus, like pop melody vocal. It's like sort of, I guess, more ethereal almost. I don't know. So yeah, and also they're really high. When we tracked these, I think we tracked them at his house actually. It took so many takes, and he was just yelling his face off and especially the second line of the chorus is the "You are enthroned." It's really, really, really high. So it took quite a few takes, and then when we got the takes that we were happy with, we were like, oh, that's it. We're keeping those. So yeah, that's what this sounds like by itself. Yeah, he's yelling his face off there. Obviously, also going through quite a lot of distortion there. It's really hitting those distortions, plugins, and saturating. Sounds really cool. Lots of reverb and stuff. Yeah, it's cool. And then we've got some layers and stuff. These are all just emphasizing different lines and different words. Quite a lot in this song, actually. There's not as many, I think, in other songs in the album, but especially on this bit, this is cool. So this is the "Meet Your Maker" line. So these are cool. These are tucked in all over the album, these little shouts. And then we've got some sort of, I think there's a lows maybe. Yeah. And then this is a little delay throw I made. It's cool. So that's pretty much it. You know, and all of the processing that I did in this session is pretty much consistent with the other sessions that I did for the rest of the album. The only things that will change are just different compositional things, different synthesizers, different layers, different guitar tones for different sections and things. I'm really happy with the sound that I got for this album. And, you know, it made us excited to listen to the album before it got mixed, because I tried to get it as close to a finished product as possible, mainly just out of practice for me in mixing. Obviously, I didn't end up mixing the album. Thomas Rodriguez did such a great job over in Clarksville in the USA. And we're so happy with what he did and what he brought to the table with the mix. It just made it sound super aggressive, and yeah, we really, really enjoyed what he did with that. But it was just great practice for me to have these songs to mix and practice mixing on. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video. It's a little insight into my process mix-wise rather than writing-wise. If you liked the video, please consider giving it a like, and also please consider subscribing to the channel if you like this sort of content. I'm really sort of just trying to grow this channel, and yeah, some support would be really, really appreciated. But yeah, let me know what more sort of content you want to see. If you want to see any other songs specifically from the album, any of the other sessions, and we can look at doing that. But yeah, that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.